the faculty members of MIT and EPN involved in this academic collaboration.
Firstly, I would like to introduce Amadeo José Arguelles Cruz, professor and research scientist at the Computational Intelligence Lab of Research Center in Computing Science, CIPN. Please, Dr. Amadeo, you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming here and have this meeting with the colleagues of MIT, the Instituto de Tecnología de Massachusetts. We have a project that we enjoy today to have the first approach of research between these institutions at the computer science at the ESCOM, and this is a great moment for you to participate in these kind of events that the National Polytechnic Institute, the Instituto Politécnico Nacional, is giving to us in order to increase our knowledge about computer science. And that is my approach today. We will be having more fun in the next, after the earthquake simulations. So enjoy the time today.
Next we have Roberto Zagal Flores, professor and research scientist of Urban Data Laboratory at High School of Computing, ESCOM. Please, Dr. Roberto Zagal, you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. It's an honor to be here with Simon and Tina and Adele. So, the purpose of this collaboration between ESCOM and Sensible City Lab is to deploy the city scanner platform in order to know the behavior of air pollution of city at different scales. So, in the context of this collaboration, I'm going to take this opportunity to launch the Urban Data Laboratory of ESCOM IPN. Our objective is to describe the urban phenomena that happens in Mexico City through the integration of complex data sources such as open data, social networks data, geographical data. So we are currently working to describe the impact of air quality, crime, and mobility problems in the city. This is the page of Urban Data Laboratory. It's for you. So, next slide, please. So, our collaboration with Sensible City Lab consists of developing an urban well-being framework for describing air pollution impact, different spatial space levels in Zacatenco Campus and other places of Mexico City and state of Mexico. With the support of MISTI APN and MIT Fund. These results can be used to generate intelligent computing systems that allow the mitigation of air pollution in our city and produce a hyper-focused public policy for Mexico City. Next slide, please. In addition, with Dr. Amadeo, we are currently forming a virtual laboratory that allows connect and share information with different labs inside and outside of APN. So we are in collaboration with Sensible City Lab, of course, and National School of Biological Science, and National Institute of Respiratory Disease, and University of State of Mexico. So, return to the first one, please. Well, in conclusion, this collaboration between Sensible City Lab and ESCOM and SIG APN will benefit the IPN students related to data science and artificial intelligence careers and master degree and PhD programs. So this is for you. Les invitamos a que colaboren con nosotros en este nuevo adventure científico. Gracias.
slots conference at 11:30 a.m. Data slots game can be used to review trade-offs between data privacy concerns and benefits of data-driven solutions. Please, Professor Martina Mazzarello, you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for us to be here. So as she mentioned, so I'm a postdoc researcher at the MIT Sensible City Lab. I'm here with Simone, and today we are happy to introduce also our lab in terms of methodology, or how do we work usually there, which are our tools in terms of data and technology, and then we will move to this lecture about the value and the trade-off between benefit and privacy concerns. Thank you very much.
Simone Mora is a research scientist, Sensible City Laboratory of MIT. He is a project lead of City Sensible, a platform to capture and visualize hyperlocal variation in the environment. Simone will teach us how to use Blackboard to monitor the air quality in Zacatenco Campus. Please, Professor Simone, you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Very happy to be here. First time in Mexico, first time in Mexico City. I came here to show you a couple of projects that we've been doing in the field of environmental sensing, and I brought with me a device that we just released a couple of weeks ago, to help communities and institutions to develop platforms for environmental sensing. So we're gonna use a few code or a few sort of interactive approaches you can see later on that will involve you listening to lectures, but also being active both with technology and also with gaming and just should I repeat everything? Okay, so we want this to be very interactive, so feel free to interrupt us, ask questions, give feedback, because we're here to establish a collaboration and we love to hear from you.
Thank you very much. Lastly, we have Professor Ivan Mozo Garcia. He's the academic director at the High School of Computing, ESCOM IPN. Please, Professor Ivan, come here and help us to inaugurate the conferences and activities of this research collaboration.
Thank you, Janina. First of all, I want to apologize myself for my bad pronunciation in English, okay? Well, dear students, esteemed researchers, distinguished guests, and colleagues, on behalf of our director, Professor Andrés Ortigosa, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to this moment occasion. Today, we are gathered here to the inaugural event for the scientific and technological exchange between Sensible City Lab of MIT, the Urban Data Laboratory of ESCOM IPN, and the Computational Intelligence Laboratory of CICIPN. I would like to extend a special welcome to our guests, the brilliant researchers Simone Mora and Marisa Mazzarello from MIT. Your presence here today is a testament to the collaborative spirit that drives scientific and technological progress across borders. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge the tireless effort for this event or organizers, Roberto Sagan and Armando Arguelles. Your dedication and commitment to advancing research and innovation have made this event possible. Today, we continue with this chapter in scientific collaboration. Here we can share knowledge, exchange ideas, and work together through the advancement of our collective goals. I'm confident that the discussion and collaboration that will take place over the next few days will lead to groundbreaking research and development in the field of science and technology. With that, I am pleased to declare this scientific and technological exchange between the MIT and the IPN officially open. I wish the participants fruitful and productive discussion and look forward to the exciting breakthroughs that will emerge from this exchange. Thank you, everybody. Aquí es un español para que todos me entiendan. Bueno, recuerden que ahorita vamos a tener el simulacro, entonces esto va a comenzar, por lo cual la participación de la doctora va a comenzar a las 11:30. Para aquellos que tenían clase justamente a las 12, les podemos extender justamente la justificación. Por favor, con la ingeniera Tania, me va a apoyar para esta parte. Y los alumnos que son de primer semestre, bueno, no hay mayor problema, avisaremos con su profesor de las 12 que llegarían 12:30. Por favor, para que después del simulacro regresemos aquí a ocupar nuestros lugares. Por favor.
So without further ado, I would like to invite you to participate in an earthquake drill and return to the auditorium to start with data slot conference at 11:30 a.m. Thank you so much.
A ver, algo que siempre hacemos en toda inauguración de evento académico o cultural o deportivo es el tradicional vuelo. Entonces, bueno, vamos a mostrar a nuestros invitados. Vamos a mostrar a los invitados justamente esta porra que tenemos aquí en el Politécnico. ¿Podemos de pie, por favor? Vamos a hacer dos vuelos. El primero para los invitados va a ser para el Politécnico y el segundo, a manera también de reconocimiento, va a ser para el MIT. ¿Sale? Y en inglés todo es bueno, ¿sale? En español. Primero para el Politécnico, entonces, 1, 2, 3.
Comienza el simulacro.
En lo que empieza el simulacro, voy a pedirle al profesor Roberto Zacatenco que explique en español el alcance de este proyecto que está trabajando con el MIT. Entonces, de manera breve, por favor. Sí, gracias, compañeros. Bueno, pues a través del Laboratorio de Datos Urbanos, la idea pues, es comenzar a describir el impacto de fenómenos como el crimen, como contaminación del aire en la Ciudad de México y en el Valle de México. Estamos en condiciones diferentes a otros países porque el momento que nosotros estamos viviendo es para describir cómo nos está impactando. Una vez que conocemos estos impactos, podemos diseñar política pública hiperfocalizada o podemos diseñar sistemas inteligentes que ayuden a mitigar o que colaboren para elevar el bienestar urbano de los ciudadanos de Ciudad de México. Esa es la misión del laboratorio.
Y del proyecto que tenemos en colaboración con el Sistema Civil. Entonces es importantísimo para nuestra ciudad y para nuestro país el que podamos desarrollar esos estudios que deriven en poder solucionar problemas que tenemos todos, al menos en esta ciudad y por qué no en otras ciudades que existen en el país y en el mundo. En el caso del Sensible City Lab, ellos han estado desarrollando tecnología en otras ciudades, en Brasil, en Holanda, en Italia. Bueno, ellos les van a mostrar en un momento después de la simulación, del simulacro, perdón, todo lo que implica estar desarrollando investigación. Es un trabajo enorme lo que ellos han hecho, lo van a ver, y que sean esta presentación una motivación para ustedes en que desarrollen sus capacidades al máximo, que no se limiten por lo que puedan estar desarrollando como profesionales de ciencias de la computación y por qué no de otras áreas, de otras carreras, porque tenemos esa capacidad de ser transversales a todas las líneas de pensamiento y de conocimiento que tiene el ser humano. Entonces los animamos a que con todas las ganas que desarrollen en sus capacidades como individuos, a que tengan un acercamiento fuerte a lo que es las ciencias de la computación, no solamente desde la perspectiva de ser un estudiante, sino desde la perspectiva de ser profesionales y de implementar la ciencia y la tecnología para el beneficio de ustedes, de sus familias y de la sociedad en general. Sí, gracias, María. ¿Puedes pasar a la siguiente lámina, por favor? Lo que estamos trabajando con Simona es hacer este framework para medir la contaminación del aire a diferentes niveles, ¿no? Vamos a nivel micro, que es medir el interior, la calidad del aire dentro de la escuela, dentro de la escuela, y después vamos a implementar los sensores en el platform, que es la tecnología que trae Simón, en rutas de autobuses para mapear estos contaminantes y conocer cómo nos está impactando a nivel de superficie. El siguiente nivel es macro, es trabajar con los datos de la Secretaría de Medio Ambiente. Ahí tenemos base de datos de millones de registros y es conocer históricamente cómo esto nos ha impactado, ¿no? A nivel de contingencia sobre todo. Y por último, a nivel social, pareciera que las redes sociales no aportan mucho, pero describen muy bien el sentir de las personas sobre estos fenómenos, sobre todo en la contaminación del aire que está comprobado, el crimen, y en la siguiente, ahora, ¿cómo involucra esto a inteligencia artificial y ciencia de datos? Bueno, estas áreas requieren que se involucren con los dueños de los datos. Esta área es multidisciplinaria. Es el proyecto que estamos proponiendo con el doctor Mario, ver la forma como conectarnos al interior del Politécnico con diferentes laboratorios y hacia afuera, que es lo más importante. Entonces aquí estamos buscando la colaboración con el INER, que son especialistas en efectos de calidad del aire en el sistema respiratorio, y también con otras universidades como la web. Ellos son expertos en geografía de la salud y también en algunos temas de turismo. Estamos trabajando con los estudiantes, desde ya que no se preocupen. Y la
my pleasure to introduce Martina Mazzarello, who will be sharing their knowledge and expertise with us today in this conference. She is a postdoc fellow researcher at Sensible City Lab of MIT. Today she holds a PhD in special design. She studied at Politecnico di Milano. She was teaching at CIS MIT School of Architecture and Planning. Their participation in this conference is greatly appreciated, and we are excited to hear their insights about data slots to reveal trade-offs between data privacy concerns and benefits of the data-driven solutions. We are privileged to have this distinguished researcher share their knowledge and expertise with us today.
So thank you again. Very nice to meet you. We're trying to make this presentation very informal, so feel free to ask questions if you don't understand something. So as we mentioned, we are from the MIT Sensible City Lab. The MIT Sensible City Lab is a lab located at MIT, so this is the main facade of MIT. I hope you are able even to come to visit us and we can organize a beautiful tour there. But besides that, so the MIT Sensible City Lab is located within the urban planning department, so specifically in this building. Simone is gonna... Okay, try to unshare, reshare again, because sometimes it gets stuck there. We are located at MIT in the urban planning department because we work a lot with cities. So this is a diagram representing all people working at the lab. So the interesting part of our lab is that we are a very mixed group from different disciplines, totally different disciplines. We have like people working with math and physics and economics, working with architects, designers, so all working together in projects that you can see at the bottom of this diagram. Because we think this is very important to have this multidisciplinary approach, and every project so have this mixing of knowledge and disciplines working together, and also great people coming all over the world, from all over the world. So it's a very interesting also place. And what we do, okay, what we do. So we have many projects in many cities around the world. So all the green dots are some ongoing projects in some cities around the world. And we also have some black ones that are cities where we have long-term collaboration. So we decided to build a lab on the ground in order to create new relationships and in order to create a new network to enlarge even the projects and the research we are conducting there. What we do, so I told you that we work with research about city, we work with data and technology, and so what we try to do every time with every research project is try to combine what we have in our physical layer of the city, so what we can see around us walking and going around in cities, but also trying to merge the digital layer, so data and technology around us and how we interact and how everyone interacts with places and with our devices moving in cities, and how can we improve cities combining this knowledge between the digital and the physical layer. And our approach in general so is something like this. So we don't work only in front of our computer, even if we work a lot with data and we have a lot of computer scientists, but we try to create and build our own prototypes and try to build and have feedback of people on the ground. So usually in all our projects, we work a lot with existing data, the ones that are called opportunistic data. So we take data that is already collected for other reasons, and then we try to use it in a new way, in something that is helpful for us to answer new questions about cities. Other times, when with the existing data is not enough, we want to try to get more accurate data, and so we build our sensors and our prototypes. And this is something that we're gonna learn more later with Simone's presentation and then with the workshop that we are conducting here in these days. The other interesting approach of our lab is that since we are working with complex topics, because cities are complex, because data and our approach is of course kind of complex, we want to every time find a way to translate what we do, all our projects, even the more complicated ones, in a way that everyone can understand what we do, can understand a meaning of what we are doing. And this is something that we believe that is important even for every one of you, even if you are a student, when you are trying to present your work during your exams or in general. It's very important to have a very clear storytelling explaining why we are doing something and try to help people to understand which are the results and how can we use these results, because we are working with projects with cities, but then if the final users are citizens, so everyone has to understand the meaning of what we do. So that's why we organize a lot of exhibitions. We try to have every project very clear in our website. If you have a look in our website, every project has a very simple story behind it, where we explain what the project is about. And then if you go down in the website, you see also the journal and the publication, where of course all the other technical parts are also mentioned. But again, so we work a lot with data and technology and we try to think about data in a positive way. So we try to think how data can be helpful for us to get some information or to improve our everyday life. This is our goal. This is the benefit that we think every time that we work with data. But as we know, so when we are working with data, we can find also some privacy concerns. So at some point we started to think about all the ethical part when we are working with data. And we started to ask ourselves, so what is the trade-off between these privacy concerns and benefit? And just in a simple example, so when we are using like Google Maps, when we want tonight, when we're gonna find a restaurant where to go tonight and we are not familiar with the city, of course our trade-off is a way to get to the restaurant, and is of course something that we are getting immediately back because we need it. We need something that can help us to find the restaurant. But on the other side, we know that Google is collecting a lot of information. So, and this trade-off, so how can we understand and how can we measure this trade-off between these two parts? We believe that it's very different. The changes by countries, by types of people, by knowledge in terms of how we can use this data. And it's a very complex question to ask and to measure, and that's why we decided to build and to design a tool that is helping us to understand this big question. And that's why we are designing this activity, this actually serious game that is called Data Slots. And Data Slots is a game that actually we started to play in a physical version last year. We ran like 17 sessions around the world, in many cities around the world, in a form of a physical workshop like this, with some physical cards representing data, so there are data cards, we have some chips, and there are some ways to exchange this data and to try to propose an idea. So when I mentioned you, hi, I'm gonna have my benefit tonight using Google Maps to find my restaurant. So we're asking you, what's your benefit? So if you have these 3-4 data cards, how do you think combining them you can create a value, you can create a benefit for yourself, of course, or for your community and your city? And it was a very fun activity, actually. It was a very fun game, and this is a game that we are also playing in the physical version this afternoon and tomorrow here with some groups of people here. But then after that, we decided to have the possibility to scale this activity and to try to get even more feedback and more players of the game. And so we decided to build a digital version of the game that is something that we are gonna play now. It's a very quick activity, like 10 minutes, that everyone can play with your computer or your mobile phone. I'm sharing here just a short video that is showing the demo of the game, so showing just how it works, but it's a very simple way. And after that, I'm gonna. It's working. Okay. And after that, we're gonna ask you to play, and then we're gonna comment together some parts of the activity and no, there is not. I think you need to reshow again. It's nice when I explain a lot about technology and data, and then we are stuck in these technology issues, but okay.
Propose a data-driven solution trying to balance privacy concerns and benefits. First, fill some information about yourself. To help you come up with a great idea, pick a random scenario. You then receive 3 random data cards. Lock 1 card to keep it for the entire game. Data slots simulates a data marketplace. Remove and select other cards to build your assets. These are your final data cards. Click Proceed to move to the ideation phase. In 5 minutes, use your cards as inspiration to propose an idea, such as an app, a service, or a device for your scenario. Once you submit your idea, rate the ideas of other data slotters around the world in terms of privacy concerns and benefits. Don't forget to rate your own idea. Now it's time to become an investor. Bet your coins on one or more solutions. Don't miss the scoreboard. Create a nickname and keep track of your ranking. You can play data slots in 12 languages. Join us in our mission to understand the global perception of the critical trade-off between privacy and benefits in a data-drenched world.
Okay, so before playing, I'm gonna just highlight few parts just to explain a little bit better, since I'm here and you're not playing yourself by yourself online. The basic idea, so when at some point they're asking you to combine these cards and to create an idea, so in the ideation part, the idea is to create like an application, a service, or something that can improve, as I mentioned in the example, your life in public space, home environment, or workplace. Because at the beginning you randomly pick a scenario that can be public space, home, or workplace, and you're gonna concentrate on that in exchanging some cards and then in combining them in creating the idea. So that's the main part. But actually the game is very simple. So after at the beginning, so in the first part you receive some 3 cards, and then you lock 1 card that probably you like it or you think is useful for your idea. So as you prefer. So there is not a strategy. The strategy is yours. So there is not a right or wrong strategy. It's really up to you. And after that, so you end up with 4 final data cards. And the idea in the ideation part, that is the following one, is that to really quickly think an idea. It's not something complex. Of course, it's something that everyone can do in less than 5 minutes. And actually, you are students, you are experts also. We played this game with normal people that didn't know anything about data on the back-end part of the data, so don't worry about this. And then after that, so you will receive some other projects, other ideas from other people. You can even find some very bad ones or some very good ones, so they are very random selected, and you vote them. Even your own one, you vote them, you say, okay, this idea, I think it creates a lot of benefit, but it's really invasive, or the opposite, it's very, very invasive, and but I don't like it, so for me the benefit is very, very low. And after that, you have some digital chips that you invest and you distribute to the ideas. You can invest in one because you do all in one idea because you like it a lot, or you put like 3, 2 in other, and you distribute more equally the chips. But as all the games, I think it's better to play instead of listen one person explaining you the rules. So I'll just ask you to use this QR code, connect to the platform and the website. We are here if you have any questions, or there are some issues in the hub, in the mobile version especially, just let us know and we try to solve it right now. And we give you like 12 minutes to play.
And I leave the floor to Martina.
Yes, thank you very much for playing. So we were looking in real time just to understand how many people completed the game. If you have any questions or something didn't work out, just let us know. Even later and more informally if you don't want to raise your hand now in front of everyone. But we hope you enjoy. So as you could see at the end of the game, there was a possibility even to download the ideas. So that's because even later, if you want to play with other people and even organizing like small sessions, it's a good way to then download at the end the idea, and then you can even combine groups and brainstorm more on some ideas and maybe think an evolution of that idea in another way. That is also the purpose of this activity. So we are still trying to also have this kind of hybrid and hybrid session between the digital and the physical one. And we are still keeping the physical one, as we mentioned, for this afternoon. What we're doing now, so we selected some projects of the lab in order to show you a little bit more what we presented earlier in terms of our methodology and how usually we use this data. And so what is the output of these ideas that we try to generate and we try to balance between the privacy concerns and benefit. I'm starting with the first one that can present a lot of privacy invasiveness, I mean, in terms of the context and the type of environment that we are analyzing. It's about, as you can see in the title, about indoor. Is it too loud? No. It's okay for you? Okay. So just for you. So it's about the indoor living. So I told you that we work with cities, and then it's true. But we work also a lot in understanding better there. Because I heard.
No, there is one option.
One option.
Go to the downstairs.
Downstairs?
Yes.
Okay. Why? What did they change from before?
Because you are playing Star Wars here. Yes.
Okay, better here?
Yes, great.
Okay, great. So yeah, we're working with cities. But most of the main part working with cities is also understanding how humans act in cities. And one of the parts that is involving also the cities is about how we live in general, our work environment, our living environment, because this can also interact with a more urban dimension. So that's why we work a lot with machine learning and with visual AI techniques. And so we started to think, what if we can understand at a large scale how people are living indoor? And so what if we can inform even planners about people are living indoor at the global level? So how can we understand how we interact with our living environment at home? And this started from even before, in the slide before, started from the basic concept that we started to see during COVID-19 that we were experiencing a lot of functions in our houses. We started to do many functions together, exercising, cooking, relaxing, working, and probably this made some changes in our living environment. And made some changes in our working life and in our commuting life, and so in our cities. So everything is kind of connected. So that's why we wanted to use artificial intelligence and to apply that to indoor images around the world. How? While Simone is connecting again our magical PowerPoint, so as you know, around the world, when we were using like Airbnb or other sources on the website, we have a lot of images of our indoor. Or through social media, where we are posting images, we can see how we are living our house. So we started to collect and download images from Airbnb and other sources. And in the US, there are two main online websites about real estate, in which you look for renting apartments and rooms, shared rooms. And we started to collect the geolocation of these places and the images. And why? Because using artificial intelligence, even without the real images here, as you can imagine, so we can detect objects. So, and all the objects present in our house can tell how we are interacting in our house, how much we are using our spaces at home, how we place these objects, so the relationship between these objects. And also in terms of, we can observe the visual clutter of image. So in China, for example, we observed that a lot of apartments were full of objects, and we were controlling by size, of course, by price, in order to have a real tangible overview of what was happening. And so we started to compare some countries and to work in like Chinese countries, Korea and the US, and we are enlarging our data set. I'm mentioning this because it's a work in progress project, so it's still ongoing, so you cannot find this project online, but I think it's a good exercise to think about the potential of use this technology in a way that can explain something about this. And what we are doing now is also using this object detection and what we are doing with artificial intelligence, understanding these differences and try to relate these differences with city urban context characteristics. For example, are these differences related to socio-demographic characteristics, are related to our connectivity in the city. So there is, Facebook is sharing like an index that is called Social Connectedness Index, in which they explain how people are connected each other by neighborhood and by city. And so we're like, what if we can even understand that these differences are, so for example in the US, there were a lot of differences with the same price and size between New York and Dallas, that is in Texas. And how can we explain these differences? So some of them we could explain by high income and low income areas, some of them by socio-demographic characteristics, but also some cities are more global, and so we are building like a global index even to explain these differences in this sense. And that's I think like I can conclude this part. with these projects. But this is a project we are still working on. And I was just to mention that in the game you had probably also the living environment, and so and that can even have a huge potential to explain some other types of interaction that are happening in the cities, not only the indoor or how you organize your room. Leave the stage to Simone. Thank you for solving all the issues.
Thank you. Sorry for the. Okay, so now we're moving to something very different from what Martina has presented to you. We're not looking inside our house, we're looking outside, and not just at the city scale, but more on a global scale. Next. And the problem we're trying to address in this project is developing a better understanding of how the garbage processing works. You probably know that when you buy a piece of equipment, when you buy your iPhone or your computer, you can trace back each single component inside the device, inside the product that you buy, to where the component has been produced, how it's been commercialized, eventually how it ended up in your hands. But when you throw away something, and that something could be something expensive, something that you've used for many years, or it could be a banana peel, could be like a plastic bottle that you've just maybe used for a few minutes. When you do that, in your mind, that object no longer exists, it disappears like a black hole. But in truth, that object keeps actually traveling and keeps staying in the environment for many, many months, or weeks, months, years, or decades. Next. And so the goal here was try to understand what happens, what's the life of things when you throw them away. So do they still keep going around? Still where they end up with? And to understand this, to investigate this problem, we developed a small device, a small tag. This was done 10 years ago, so now you can get a tracker, a GPS tracker that's much smaller than this. We have built 3,000 of these in our lab. Next. And then we did a workshop in Seattle where we distributed these tags to the population, and we asked them to attach the tag to each tag to a single different piece of garbage. And then this is what happened. Can you don't allow? Thank you. Now all my data is gonna be sold on the black market. There is audio on the video. Good luck. And it's a very nice soundtrack, so it would be nice to have it. So this is the tag again. Now you're gonna see part of the workshop that we did to explain the project to citizens in Seattle and to distribute these tags. And we also asked citizens to bring their own the items that we were going to throw away, so we could help them to locate the tag inside the items. Some brought toys, someone brought like an old stuffed beer inside. And then day 0, we asked them, okay, now throw away those things. We started to track those things. And this is what happens after 5 days, 6 days, after a week, after 2 weeks. And what you're seeing here is the traces left behind by the object that were thrown away. And you can really see that objects don't stay in the same location, but they travel long distances. And in certain cases, especially in the case of e-waste, like cell phone, batteries, and so on, they seem to be bounced or to get bounced back and forth from different locations, and from the west coast to east coast back to the west coast, and many of those items end up actually at the border with Mexico. And you could ask yourself why, or what is this about? I think here there are many takeaways. First, we highlighted, we're using a very simple technology. We kind of allow this network of exchanges between different locations, between different trash processing plants. We allow to highlight this network. The second takeaway is that by making this public to people, to citizens, they can actually see with their eyes that maybe the even single plastic bottle that they've thrown away, they've used for 10 minutes, it was still there in the environment after a week, after 2 weeks, after a month, after a year. And this makes them think, oh, maybe I will pay attention, or maybe I will try to use less single serving or less plastic bottles, or we'll try to use as more as possible items that can be recycled. And the third takeaway is that the reason why many of these items ended up at the border with Mexico was not as we expected. We went there, we expected to find a large processing facility that kind of processed the waste, and there was nothing. And the reason was that the tracker that we had developed at the time could only follow items within the United States border. And we had instead found out that many of those items, especially the e-waste, were smuggled outside the country. Not to Mexico actually, to different locations, but basically outside the country. And we had a follow-up project called a monitor that you found on our website that will tell you what happened with those wastes, so you can keep on following the story. The second project, this is called Underworlds, and it's about another type of waste. As Martina said at the beginning, at the lab, we like to get our hands dirty, and this happens literally. Next. And here we're talking about another type of infrastructure. We're talking about the sewage, that similarly to garbage collection is a type of infrastructure that is available in most cities worldwide. At the same time, this infrastructure, wastewater, basically what you produce when you go to the toilet, for us is data. It contains data about how well you eat, whether you use some illegal or legal drugs, whether how much salt you intake, whether you have the flu, whether you have COVID, or other conditions. And what next? And what happens to this data is that flowing underneath the city ends up in places like this, which are not data centers, but they are wastewater processing facilities, where indeed the sewage gets analyzed, because it's very important for public health policies to understand all these things that I just mentioned. The problem is that you might know, look, in this city there is a high consumption of drugs, or there is a high level of COVID, but you don't know if that's very consistent across different neighborhoods in the city, or if there is a neighborhood that 99% of people have COVID next to one that hasn't been affected by COVID yet. Because the data is just aggregated at the city level, where it gives you a trend for the city, but it doesn't give you any information where you can take action, because you don't know where is the problem inside the city. Next. So what we did in this case, we did not build a tracker for sewage. We built a robot, a small robot, that we put inside a manual, and the robot basically sampled wastewater at the neighborhood level, so not at the city level, but for each neighborhood, and detects the amount of, based on microbiome analysis, it detects the number of bacteria and viruses in the wastewater that can be linked to disease and eating habits and so forth. And this is what our students do, so you're all welcome to join us at MIT. We have room for all of you. And the first prototype was called Luigi. As you see, it's very thin. and it can sample wastewater with a small pipe. And then Joshua came that is meant for the long-term deployment, and some of the data is processed inside the unit, and some of the data needs to be taken by the lab. That's why you have the ISO container. And this is actually a visualization of the data that we collected. And this is real data. Each single point is actually writing bacteria or viruses. And this can be segmented and then further classified to detect anything from COVID to salt consumption to different parameters. And that can be used by the city in dashboards like this one as a way to take action. And if you're thinking about, you might think about again about privacy and data slots. This is a good approach that is a trade-off between collecting this type of information and you can go next. Next. So this is, thank you. So this is a very good trade-off between privacy and value, because you would get the maximum value out of the analysis if you would put a Luigi or Mario in each single home, or if you put sensor inside the toilet in each household. At the same time, this is very invasive in terms of privacy, because you will know anyone in the city, whether they use drugs or whether they eat a lot of tacos or instead they like better to eat pizza or whatever. On the other side, the mainstream or the state of the art, which is sampling the treatment plant, you get a very good level of privacy because you cannot tell who does what. But at the same time, the value that you get out of the data gets diluted because of by the time the wastewater reaches the waste treatment facilities, a lot of those bacteria that have a shorter lifespan, they disappear, and then you lose track of the data. And on top of that, you have data aggregated at the city level, so it's not very easy to take action. So I think this is a very good example of what Martina was saying in the beginning between value and trade-offs that you need to make. Okay, next. Okay, this is a project that you all know, because Roberto Amedeo probably lectured you before for many months, hopefully. It's a project that I'm leading at the lab. It's been running for 5 years with quite success. And part of the reason Martin and I are here is to bring you one device that we're going to show in a second and help you to install it and to integrate it with the existing framework that Roberto presented to monitor air quality here in your city. Next. So, you really know, you can switch roles, you can lecture me and tell me what we're doing. But just to summarize, we care about the environment. We want to develop a new platform to map phenomena like air quality, heat, noise, and we want to use this by reusing and existing infrastructure, which are road vehicles that are already, there are a lot of vehicles in the city. Many of them, they're stuck in traffic. They're served for their taxis, their delivery vehicles, their garbage trucks, and by putting sensors on those trucks, you can monitor the environment very cheaply, because you don't have to drive yourself, you don't have to deploy many fixed sensors to replicate the functioning of one single mobile sensor. At the same time, you can get a very good space and time resolution in the data. Next. And the project started 5 years ago with this idea and with this investigation. Say, oh, can we indeed develop a platform that is so easy to install and to develop, that could be added, can be embedded on any vehicles. And to test out this hypothesis, we did a partnership with the garbage collection company that serves the Boston area, And we developed a platform called City Scanner that does exactly what you're gonna see in the video in a second. Next. So this is Cambridge, the city where I'm in this side. And if you think garbage trucks are excellent sensors because they go everywhere in the city, at least one per week. This is the first version of the prototype that is developed. It is highly modular. Each single segment collects a different type of data and you can compose it in different configurations to address the need of the city. And eventually, the data that we have collected during that pilot was released to citizens through a dashboard that allowed anyone to zoom in and check how air quality scores outside their doorstep. The platform also had thermal cameras, so we also collected thermal images from facade in order to detect thermal efficiency from a building, which might not be a critical issue for a city like your city, that is pretty warm all year long, but for Boston, where winters are very, very cold, at the same time they're very old houses that they leak heat outside to the street. Having a map of which streets, which houses actually are poor and need maintenance to improve their energy efficiency is very, very valuable. And getting that map without sending someone with a thermal camera and check home by home, but within this sort of opportunistic way, is a big cost advantage. This is another type of device similar to Underwood that we have completely invented in our lab. This was the first prototype that, to me, is very beautiful. It's almost like a design of it. It was actually exhibited in a couple of museums in the US. But what's the problem with this device? That is fragile, first problem. The second, it does, you see those holes here. We had to drill through the garbage truck to install it, and they were not very happy with that. So when we had removed it, they were left with holes. We tried to explain we did it for science, but they were not very happy. So that's why next, following other iterations, we developed devices that actually was released a couple of weeks ago, that broke the news, was advertised on many news outlets. That is completely autonomous, meaning that the next, try to click again.
You take a photo of the driver, one driver, just to direct their truck.
I was in the photo. Did you notice? Yeah, I took it. So the device is completely autonomous because it has a solar panel, it has magnets, so no more drilling, no more kind of cutting through steel. And it's also very modular, so you see there in the compartment can be modified with different sensors and different configurations. Next. And what we're doing this afternoon, we're going to show you how to build and to assembly and test out one of these devices. Next. And this is part of the assembly process. As you see, it's very simple. So you need a 3D printer to print out part of the outer shell, and then some electronics that can be either purchased from the market or can be produced in university labs. And finally, we get to the last project, which is called Robot. Robot stands for robotic bot. As you understood, we like robots a lot. Next. And here is a completely different domain. So we're not talking about sensor and sensings directly. We're talking about autonomous vehicles. We're talking about canals, wide canals and autonomous vehicles. Because many cities, I'm not sure if Mexico has many canals, or do you have So what you're seeing there is Amsterdam. which similar to other European cities like Venice, they had a huge network of canals that were then paved to make room for streets because of the car industry, they needed to sell cars. But more recently, cities like those, they're trying to rediscover canals, and they try to put them in use as they were in the old times. Next. Yeah, exactly. So it's very common to many cities. At the same time, navigating in canals is not easy for computers because of the mixed use of the canals. They're like professional boat driver, there are unprofessional boat driver, there are tourists, there are small boats, big boats, there are ducks, there is wildlife crossing that doesn't need to be turned into lunch or dinner. Next. So here, to develop some sort of autonomous vehicle, we developed a very participatory approach, similar to DataSlot, where we use card. Here we used a toolkit to help citizens in Amsterdam to brainstorm what they could use with autonomous boats for in their city. And a few ideas came up. Next. For example, we thought that boats could be used to ferry larger boats in and out of the city, especially those tourist boats that run empty and run without tourists when they need their park far outside the city. And then they need to be brought in and out. And they use a lot of fuel just for the commute. And this fuel could be saved if you had a smaller boat, electric boat that can be just tow them in and out. Next. Then we thought about something that was done in the old times on water, garbage collection. And so in the old times, they were indeed floating bins, and then were replaced by curbside collection and were replaced by garbage trucks that were that actually are causing the canals to sink due to their weight. So we thought about an autonomous boat that could actually could work as a floating bins, and then they could go autonomously to the waste treatment facility and empty itself with no intervention from the humans. Next. Another type of use case you could do is building configurations of different boats. In this case, they don't look like boats; they look more like floating platforms. And then you can use those platforms as markets, as bridges, as stages for music performances, as anything you want. Next. And finally, what you've seen so far were concepts. The concepts were actually built into a full-scale prototype, and then very recently, about a month ago, became a company that is now commercializing robots worldwide. And this is our very first prototype that set the sale October last year, and I'm gonna end with a quick video that summarizes the project from beginning to end. Will the video start? So.
This is Lucy. Lucy is a rowboat, a fully autonomous, zero-emission boat that operates on urban waterways, and she can change the way cities work. As congestion and emissions continue to rise, while cities continue to grow, the existing infrastructure of many cities struggles to keep up. Rowboats offer a solution by moving road traffic to the water. By bringing passengers from A to B, or as an on-demand boat, taking you anywhere you want. And they can also help the city as a multi-purpose workboat. Take Crystal. She is equipped to connect household waste to free the streets from heavy garbage trucks. Rowboats are fully autonomous, so they navigate without a skipper and can operate 24/7. In order to sail by themselves, rowboats need to perceive their environment and recognize objects such as bridge pillars, floating objects, and of course other vessels. The primary source of information comes from a LiDAR sensor, but robots are also equipped with cameras, GPS, and a digital compass. Robot's onboard computer provides and processes all of the data and runs the robot software so it can successfully complete its mission plan. After 5 years of development, testing and experimentation, we have now successfully enabled autonomy on the full-scale prototypes. Robot is ready for the next step. Join us and let's unlock the potential of urban waterways together.
Okay, thank you so much for your attention, and Martina and I are very happy to take questions. I'm already seeing one hand there. Yes.
How do you create prototypes? It probably has great solutions and whatnot, but for locals, when these things are given, the price rises, right? And so these locals are driven out of the areas. How do you combat that? How do you have solutions for that?
For which project in particular?
For the last one, yeah, probably.
Okay, so the question, just for those of you who haven't heard, is what's the cost of this, but how a small community can afford this type of technology? This is a great question. I think it's more a question for something that we don't do, which is like engineering of the project and business development. I think that in the case of robot, it's true that the barrier could be pretty high, meaning that it's probably be expensive and in the short term. For other projects like CT scanner, in that case the cost is much lower, and is of course a different type of product, but it's more scalable in terms of cost, because of while for certain type of research you don't care about, you want to build something that is so revolutionary that you don't care the cost, you want to prove the concept. For other type of research, like air quality sensor, you already have expensive sensors. So maybe the room you have to do research is how to cut that cost. And then of course it benefits the kind of richer city, richer community. They can buy more of those sensors, but also the smaller community that could not have afforded any sensor, and now they can.
¿Más preguntas? Any other questions? Pregunte. Yo tengo una, pero
these ideas come from data slots, or you choose, I don't really think they come from data slots, but how do you choose, my question is, the project of data slots, do you try to build it, or how do you choose what to do in your lab?
Yes, no, I've got a question. Interesting question. So actually, DataSource is a very young project, let's say, and I can answer in two different ways. So first, how do we choose projects at the lab? So it's very depending on how it's reaching out to us. So sometimes we have some organizations or some cities, like municipalities or specific partners that come to us and they say, like, we have this issue, we wanna work on this issue. In the robot project, they came to us saying, oh, we wanna solve some mobility issues, and we think that the solution is autonomous car. And then we say, oh, did you have a look of your map? Actually, you have more water than streets, so probably we can have autonomous boat. In other projects, like the one that you mentioned, trash truck, for example, was not related to a specific company, but was more about a problem that everyone is facing, and so as a lab we decided to work on it. some other projects are related to companies. So we work with Uber, for example, in some point, and so we work a lot in mobility with questions related to mobility because Uber was the main partner. Or we work with Coca-Cola, where they wanted to understand consumption behavior of people in different cities around the world, and we had like a project that is called Drinking Data, in which we showed the consumption's behavior around the world, let's say, and trying to understand how did they change. So it depends. It depends on who is the partner. If the partner is giving us like types of data that are interesting, and we decide to work in a certain way with this data, or they just bring a topic and we think about which kind of data and technology we can use to solve it. We see this kind of, so we were more starting from the topic, and then we develop the sensors and we work on the projects. So it's very useful. On data slots, actually we are more interested now in understanding people perception of certain types of data. So especially in the first part of the game, when we were deciding which card to keep or which card did you want to avoid. For us, it's a way to understand immediately, even without a specific knowledge of the project, so which are certain types of data that you think can be invasive. And then when you combine them and you create the idea, for us it's not about what's the idea about, but it's more like, oh, this person thinks that these types of data together can create something. And also this person is judging another person with other cards that creates something in this way. So it's a way to understand how people think in terms of data. And we hope that that can be also a tool for municipalities and cities to work on certain types of projects depending on how people perceive them. So not from a top-down approach, but more for a bottom-up, so how people feel about it. Or maybe sometimes about knowledge. Some people are judging invasive some types of data because maybe they don't know about the potential of using them. So it's a combination of strategies more on these directions.
Let me change in Spanish. Y tu pregunta fue bastante interesante porque da pie a la innovación a partir de la moral que tienen las personas para atender sus necesidades primarias. Si tenemos en nuestra región problemas de agua o problemas de sanidad como los proyectos que vieron, en donde se tratan diferentes datos para poder extraer información y atender y poder presentar soluciones innovadoras que detonen en que la sociedad voltee a verlos y cambien su actitud para poder enfrentarlos. Entonces tienes un juego serio que te permite revisar cómo es que las personas estamos atendiendo problemas de acuerdo con nuestra manera de pensar. Y eso es lo valioso que tiene el trabajo que está haciendo el laboratorio, que se puede trasladar a otros entornos como el que tenemos nosotros aquí en la Ciudad de México o en el país. Entonces es importante, esa es la esencia del ejercicio de mostrar aquí el desarrollo de investigación que está realizando el laboratorio del Sensible City Lab. Acá.
Privacy was a big part of this talk all around. My question is, with Cityscape, how do you protect the data from the people that live there? For example, we saw that you take photos, or I don't know if you take videos, but let's say someone is walking by, and then you take a photo and they show up. How do you protect them? And also, if these people in this area, they know that their houses, their temperature and other things are being monitored.
Yeah, good question. So we try of course, to minimize having these questions, these problems. And it's also something that, again, going back to data's law, it changed a lot from country to country, from legislation to the legislation, also from perception of very different, even within the same country, within the same city, you have people that think vastly differently between their privacy and so on. So in CT scanner, in the experiment you saw in Cambridge, we don't have cameras. We have thermal sensors, or we can call them thermal cameras, but you cannot identify people based on their temperature or fingerprint detection. It's true that CT scanner is designed as a platform, so maybe someone can build a camera out of it that can be, and of course it's more invasive than thermal cameras. I think your point of, do you know that people living in Cambridge know that their house temperature is monitored? They know when we release the project. But it's true, this is something I never thought about before. That could be indeed something, could be combined with other type of data, could be something sensitive. In general, the framework we use to, when we plan for a pilot study, we need authorization from the city to actually install. So we need authorization for the company that we work with for deploying the sensor, but also from the city, because of, even if we're just collecting air quality, that cannot be linked to any individual, still you're collecting data in public spaces. And even in cases where you're not kind of obliged by law to release, we want to tell cities, look, we're doing this pilot as a way to exchange then data and to exchange information and data. So I think the first step that we use to avoid these issues is talk with the city and get permission from them. And I think then you might have people that might be feel disturbed about getting their house facade temperature public. But I think it's something that can only be addressed with, so it's not something illegal, but it's something that can be addressed with collaboration, with, on one side, with some outreach activity, so try to engage with people explaining, not just presenting things as they are. We've done that, either you're happy or not, like to engage them at the beginning of the pilot with consultations, and we plan to do this, what are your feedbacks? And eventually to build these loops. There is not like a very simple answer.
No, I mean, I think this is an interesting point that bring an interesting part of the conversation, that is to every time to reflect that a combination of data maybe can be very sensitive, but the first one maybe is not itself very sensitive. So if you think about CT scanner, all the data that are the output data are not sensitive itself, because there is like an image with some colorful areas that are showing temperature. So you can understand that there is like person or certain areas in terms of temperature. This is a thermal camera output, so it's an image with different colorful areas. But then, so that one is not sensitive itself. So you go to the city and then you ask, oh, I'm putting these tracking sensors, we collect this information. Okay, good. No people, you don't know anything about who is going there, passing there. So it's not sensitive information. But then if you combine like with other like utilities data within a building, and then you go up with other types of data, it can become very sensitive. This is happening all the time. So even in the game of data slots, maybe some singular types of data that were not sensitive, but if you combine some of them, can become very sensitive. And this is a topic that for every project is actually happening.
And at the same time, there are algorithms that you require to construct, taking into account this kind of point. Because if you want to provide services to the community, you need to check that your algorithms include ethics in order to provide solutions that doesn't have anybody. And it's very complicated point. That's the reason Simone told you that your question was very interesting, but at the same time very difficult. And let me translate it in Spanish now. Because, porque también para nosotros como comunidad de cómputo es importante que tengamos la ética en la inteligencia artificial y en el aprendizaje automático para poder atender los datos. Y normalmente es lo que dejamos fuera porque nuestra formación como ingenieros está enfocada hacia otras cosas, hacia solucionar el problema, pero sin atender la parte ética social. Pero estamos inmersos en la sociedad. Si nosotros vamos a querer vehículos autónomos, ¿cómo voy a programar al vehículo autónomo para que en caso de que encuentre un grupo de personas en el trayecto, no los impacte? Pero ¿qué va a hacer el auto autónomo? Ahora me voy a estrellar y voy a tener que hacer que el individuo que va dentro del vehículo autónomo fallezca. Entonces tienes esos escenarios que atenderlos bajo una perspectiva de ética que está complicada y que todavía no le alcanza o se está desarrollando en muy corto tiempo para poder atender esas necesidades y dar soluciones al problema. Pero es muy pertinente tu pregunta, porque en eso también debemos de pensar. Aparte de todas las cosas complicadas que hacemos, tenemos que voltear a ver ese dato, porque es relevante. Nosotros nos debemos a una sociedad y por algo estamos aquí.
Hi. I think all of you have shown to us is very interesting. And my question is, how can we collaborate to all of these projects? Because I understand that part of the plan is to replicate some of these scenarios or implementations, but here in Mexico. And if it is, how can we collab with the lab? Is only with the data slots, or there are some other ways?
That's another good question. I think there are many ways. One way, the simplest, is what we're doing here now. So talking and giving feedbacks, and we're gonna be here for another couple of days, so you're very welcome to come to us, present your project, and we're very happy to give you feedback. The second way, many of our projects are platforms, so you're correct. The first step is implementing the same experiment here, but the next step is understanding how you can tailor, how you can customize that experiment to the specific problems and opportunities that you have here. Many of our projects are also open source. In the case of CT Scanner, what I'm going to present is you can actually reuse everything and maybe come up with a better CT Scanner, or just that CT Scanner that works better for your context. As well as when, in the few toolkits that we showed about brainstorming and idea generation, similar way. You can adopt the toolkit, we use it, we developed it for generating idea of how to use autonomous boats in Amsterdam. You could use the same process to generate idea about how to change mobility in your city, how to have people to engage with people about developing sustainable behavior, all kind of things.
So thank you, Simon. The idea of the collaboration between ESCOM and MIT is to produce thesis projects about urban phenomena context. So we have different opportunities to collaborate and detect in science, because it's very different, the context of Boston and Mexico City. You know that Mexico City is a complex city. So in this moment with Dr. Amadeo, we are running a different thesis project about air pollution with collaboration of Simon, crime, and water analysis. So you can reach to us, you can reach to the Urban Data Laboratory ESCOM in order to make urban idea. So I'm gonna switch to Spanish. Bueno, para eso tenemos el Laboratorio de Datos Abiertos de la Ciudad de México, que produce muchos datos que podemos analizar, y en ESCOM acabamos de fundar el Laboratorio de Datos Urbanos para hacer la implementación del City Scanner en Zacatenco con el apoyo de Simon. Y la idea es que pues, se puedan acercar al laboratorio y ver qué propuestas tenemos. En cuestiones estamos analizando crimen y aspectos del agua, consumo del agua, entre otras cosas. So I think that the iRobot it could be very useful run on, for example, Rio Lerma, close to Toluca. Remember that Rio Lerma feeds or provides water to Mexico City. So in fact, it could be a difference between the quality of water in Rio Lerma and the water that comes to Mexico City. So this is an idea. So thinking with Amadeo, we can propose a competition of project thesis about urban problems, and I think that we can select one or two teams in order to visit Boston, funded by this project, maybe.
Let me switch. Sí, el punto es que tengamos, el trabajo de tesis dura un año, entonces pudiéramos estar, podemos hacer lo que mencionó el doctor aquí, enfrente de ustedes, donde para el año siguiente programemos aquellos dos proyectos de tesis, trabajos o trabajos terminales que estén orientados a atender un problema de la Ciudad de México y que vayan a Boston para hacer una estancia de un par de meses y que deben de traer ya concluido su trabajo y que lo presenten aquí en el instituto. Eso es por un lado. Esa es una forma de colaborar con el MIT y con ESCOM y con SIC y con UPITA y también con el CIME, porque tenemos dos proyectos multidisciplinarios aquí en el instituto. Unos que tienen que ver con Smart Cities, bueno, ambos tienen que ver con Smart Cities, solo que uno está enfocado a distintos módulos que están orientados a problemas de medio ambiente, problemas de agua, problemas de energía, problemas de movilidad, y entonces ahí ustedes pueden colaborar haciendo trabajos terminales o haciendo servicio social que permita estar dando atención a varios aspectos que se están desarrollando en los proyectos de investigación. Y entonces, pues aquí el maestro Miguel Sánchez, que viene del ESCIME, él está dirigiendo uno de los proyectos multidisciplinarios, un servidor está atendiendo el otro, que es el del maestro Miguel es de Smart Cities, el mío es de movilidad inteligente en territorios urbanos. Entonces hay mucho por hacer, hay muchas formas de trabajar. Los proyectos apenas fueron aprobados este año y son para 3 años. Entonces hay muchas formas de acercarse y desarrollar trabajo de investigación de lo que ustedes gustan hacer, que es programar, implementar algoritmos y por qué no acercarse a otras formas de
poder atender problemas que tenemos nosotros como sociedad, aquí en la ciudad o en el país, o incluso en otros lugares como Boston. No crean que ellos tienen todo resuelto, tienen un montón de problemas. Es un espacio pequeño, hay mucho dinero, pero también muchas necesidades. Entonces, el problema los problemas no se atacan solamente con dinero, se atacan con ideas, se atacan con formas novedosas de poder acercar el cómputo a eso. Y como platicamos hace un momento, atendiendo siempre la privacidad de las personas, atendiendo la ética profesional que debe estar presente para poder resolver esos. Entonces, en un momento dado aquí el doctor les hará llegar a la comunidad una propuesta para que aquellos que estén interesados en el reto puedan estarse viendo con Martina y con Simone en Boston, en la cueva, ¿ok? Así le llaman a su laboratorio. De veras, no le dicen la cueva. Yo cuando llegué, me sentí atrapado en el tiempo, ¿no? Pero muy interesante. Entonces, pongan eso en su lista. Yo me quiero ver en Boston trabajando con Simone.
So in IP we have a small funds to pay travel to Boston. So, recuerden que está el fondo de movilidad para las carreras de IA y ciencia de datos. Pues hay que pedir a la autoridad que tengamos ya los convenios para hacer la movilidad. So we have a mobility program of students. They can travel for 1 month and I can pay the expenses. So esa es la idea. But we need a collaboration, a document, to sign a document of collaboration between IPN and let's say IPN and
the idea competition is very, very good. And then we can have like a jury with us and Fabio. And then we select the ideas that I'm sure that not just based on the innovation kind of level, but also the project we do. So we can also do the proposal for the idea competition together. So we kind of focus on ideas that are November, yeah. Yes, it's true. That could be to see the ideas. Yes, amazing.
Hay un congreso que organizamos en noviembre, November 8, en Jalisco. Probablemente podamos llevarlos para que presenten a los ganadores, para que interactúen de forma personal con Simón. Ellos van a estar aquí todavía mañana, trabajando con nosotros, y si quieren acercar, pues adelante. Tenemos ya con Amadeo un fondo de un proyecto que nos acaban de probar. We have a small fund to produce to make a production of the sensors hardware. Yeah. Entonces podemos crear una línea de producción para crear unos 15, 20 sensores y empezar a hacer monitoreo. So, is there any question?
Have you ever think of accelerating the analysis of the diseases that requires the solid things, samples, because you have tons of data in those Luigi and what is the other thing? You have tons of data about the health of the people with those robots, and for example, if you accelerate analysis like in a neighborhood, you can prevent diseases like COVID-19 because the diseases don't appear from one day to another. So with that data, you can like accelerate those things.
Yeah, so you just pitched what actually happened with a real startup after Underworld project. So that was the idea. So the startup, the spin-off is called BioBoat, and it's actually some researchers that they were working on underworld projects, so they were doing the collection part. They decided to create a startup from that, and then now it's a company that had a lot of success because they launched it just before COVID, and then COVID happened, and then they were able to work a lot, as you mentioned. So of course, yeah, that is the idea. Of course, we cannot like develop, and you develop all of the projects. So some of them, in some point, they become like a spin-off, and we leave it to the world. Let's say the robot the same, as Simone mentioned, and Underworld the same, and some others the same. They become a company, and we say bye.
I wanted to ask about the trash project. It got me thinking that if there were any other takeaways that you had with the project, because I really thought that it was very interesting that when the trackers went to other countries outside of the US, that I don't know if they just like stopped working, or for legal reasons you cannot say that where they went. But it got me thinking if that trash that reached Mexico could also have reached other countries like outside of Latin America, like countries in Europe or Asia. And I also have another question, like if there are any programs in the US about recycling trash, because I know that here in Mexico there is a very people have the idea that no matter if you recycle your trash, it will not end up recycled, because you can put everything in different bags, but you can see the truck come in and just put everything in the same bag and just like there it ends. So your recycling efforts went for nothing. So I wanted to know what other takeaways you have.
Thank you. So the first question, the reason why the tracker stopped working was indeed because we only had a subscription for US data. Again, it was 10 years ago. It was less common to have cellular or like roaming agreements and such. But then we did do a follow-up project because of we saw these clusters of electronic waste where we're ending up at the borders with the country and not in the middle of the country. So we suspected that they were actually brought outside the country. And what that project called Monitura revealed that were actually smuggled. I'm not an expert here in policy and legislation, but I know that there is like international treaty that the US did not ratify that prevents actually countries from exporting e-waste. But the US did not ratify it, did not sign it. So what happened is that this waste ended up in the Southeast Asia, where actually the e-waste were not treated the way they should. And there is a lot of also there is sort of an economy of the waste, a community that suffer. Maybe they get little money out of the waste, but they suffer a lot of health issues because of the toxicity of the waste. And the second question, answer it or? I think this trash truck is one of the most successful projects in the lab, and we have been thinking for years now to make a version 3. And looking at two directions, the one is that with today's technology, you can actually make the tracker that is much cheaper, so we can track more type of wastes. And the second direction is indeed in what you say. So looking at specific type of waste. So the first version of the first edition of the project was very generic. We tracked everything. The second edition we tracked e-waste. And the third project, one of the directions that we're considering is actually looking at recycling streams and prove like the efficiency, or try to map the efficiency of those streams. So I think if you write down this idea for the idea competition, you have a good chances to win and come to Boston. Thank you.
Muy bien, muchachos, creo que the last question. Okay.
I have a question. So I feel like all your different projects all have a different purpose depending on the client and the approach, right? But for example, with the autonomous boat, I was wondering if the gain of making an autonomous boat justifies the amount of e-waste of making one. So how do you justify making intelligent cities or autonomous vehicles if, well, it's proven that in the end sometimes the fuel that they need or the electricity that they need or the amount of pollution that creating them makes, how do you justify making these, and do you consider these do you consider the gain and loss of making these intelligent cities and intelligent devices when taking these projects, or do you just make them?
No, good question. Of course, yeah, we need to take into consideration everything, because if we're trying to work on other projects about carbon emission and then we are doing like a project in which we are wasting a lot of energy, of course, it's not like balanced in terms of strategy. Every time we of course, we take it, we try to control even that part, and we try to work as much as possible without energy, or, city scanner is like a solar, there is a solar panel on top, or of course a robot is an electric one, and we need to take into consideration about everything. Then apart from, so we work on the research side about the model and how to deploy it, and then we are leading the production, as I mentioned. So of course there is a risk in terms of who is going to use that in the future. This is something we cannot control at all in general. So in terms of our prototypes, in terms of our input, what we try to give to the city with the project, we try to optimize it as much as possible. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point, and it's indeed another trade-off that you need to consider when you develop a new project. In this case, if I understood your question well, is you say, is it worth it to, to use so much energy in terms of electricity, in terms of waste, battery waste, for example, to build autonomous both, while you could do the same service, just hiring a captain. It's very difficult question. I think it's more. I think it's connected somehow to inequalities, which is another big topic that we haven't touched today, and we're happy to come back to touch about it, because it is true. I mean, if it's okay, I know this will give me this benefit, and this will impact the environment in this way, but then it will impact everyone at the same amount. I think you take a certain type of decision. If you know that this will give me these benefits, but the negative impact will not affect my city directly, will affect another city, maybe on the other side of the world, then maybe your decision would be different. So again, it's decision that is then connected with ethics. It depends also on the type of. There is more and more. I think on the positive note, there is more and more attention on sustainability, and also the fact that what you build doesn't also just to be super cool, but it needs to be sustainable for the future generations. At the same time, I think we've seen, they was talking about AI, and probably not all these AI tools that we use, and we give us very good recommendation. They use a lot of energy for training of AI models. It's just that they usually those center, they're not in cities, they are in the middle of nowhere. So you don't see the pollution, you don't see that. But at the global scale, they exist. I think it's what the only thing we could do is more bringing when we have this with new ideas, try to understand the impact at the global scale. Also these side effects that you don't see easily.
I can add also in terms of our approach, I think what we do a lot is we try to minimize the use of to build technology. So we showed a lot of prototypes here in the presentation, but if you have a look at our overview of other projects, what we try to really use our existing data and try to get advantage of it. Because there was a few years ago, there was some point that for everything you build a new sensor to track something that is already tracked in another way with for another purpose. So I think that this is something that we try to do a lot all the time, and it's an important point. So why do we need to build the technology? I mean, for CT scanner was actually mandatory because it was not available similar accurate data on that. For robot, again, it has other purposes, and was trying to think that the main use case was not the passenger vehicle to cross the city, because of course there are others that are more important one. That was from the commercial point of view the most attractive in terms of image of the project, but for us the main use cases, and also for the cities, were the trash bin moving around, so collecting and then bringing the trash somewhere else, or all the others more related to the infrastructure, solving infrastructure issues. But in general, yeah, that's the important part. So new projects, not build something that is already done by someone else or something else.
Let me translate it in Spanish right now. Y todo esto va orientado a atender los problemas que tenemos como planeta en general. Si estamos hablando de que tenemos para el 2030 que atender los ODS, espero que todos tengan aquí conocimiento de eso, y si no, pues revísenlo, los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible de la ONU. Tenemos que estar alineados todos para poderlos atender de distintas formas y a distintos niveles. Y uno de lo que estamos haciendo aquí es atender el problema 17, el ODS 17. ¿Cómo podemos hacer sinergias para poder resolver esos problemas? Entonces, va desde el que los tomadores de decisiones en la parte alta de la sociedad hasta las personas de a pie como nosotros, que tenemos que estar atendiendo cómo sumamos soluciones a problemas locales, pero pensando en atender esos problemas de forma global. Entonces, por eso es importante el que este tipo de foros se ofrezcan para que todos estemos como sociedad en esa misma sintonía de atender esos problemas. Y vuelvo al punto, no es cuestión de dinero, es cuestión de pensar cómo podemos atender esos problemas desde la perspectiva individual, pero atendiéndolos como grupo. Y es eso lo que creo que estamos haciendo ahorita. Y pues agradecemos mucho el que ustedes estén interesados en estas actividades y que todo lo que vieron el día de hoy les haya permitido tener otro punto de vista para poder atender los problemas que tenemos como mexicanos y también como americanos, ¿verdad? Bueno, norteamericanos, porque somos norteamericanos. Bueno, yo italiano. Sorry, I not public. Pero esa es la intención. Entonces, convivencia para atender problemas es lo que creo yo les pudimos transmitir con esta visita de Simón y de Martina el día de hoy y el día de mañana, y pues esperemos que no sea la primera vez que se haga de este lado, pero tampoco la primera vez de aquel lado. Entonces simplemente pónganlo en su agenda y pues nos vemos pronto. Muchas gracias.
Por último, para hacer esta colaboración, visiten la página urbandatalab.escom.ipn.mx. Vamos a hacer un anuncio en Facebook para que también lo tengan todos y podamos hacer esta colaboración. Muchas gracias a todos. No se vayan, para finalizar, pues vamos a darles un reconocimiento a Simona y a Martina. Please.
Thank you so much, Simon and Martina. We're going to give you a certificate for this excellent conference.
¿Nos pueden tomar una foto por ahí, por favor? Una selfie. Una selfie si hay otras. ¿Qué te parece?
Pero se tienen que poner todos en la selfie. No sé cómo le van a hacer, ustedes son los buenos.
Una de frente, por favor, y otra con la comunidad.
Sí, me lo mandas. Pero si quieres pelando ya se me queda para otra. No tengo, bueno, tengo varias, pero no tengo. Para probar, ¿no? Más probable es que tenga esa, pero sí, yo te acuerdo. Te digo al teléfono de revista.
Bien, por último, los que quieran participar con nosotros en esta colaboración, tenemos 4 equipos, uno enfocado a análisis de redes sociales en Twitter, otro a trabajar con datos gráficos con GIS, otro para hacer minería de datos y otro para la aplicación de los sensores. Somos poquitos, no sé si puedan levantar las manos, raise your hands, the people who are working with me. So, we have only 4 teams, one for social network analysis, data mining, and GIS analysis, geographical information systems, and sensor data. So you are welcome to work with us. Gracias a todos.